So we just had the intelligence hearing. There's a committee in the Senate that reviews intelligence matters. In case any of you don't know what the Intelligence Committee is, it just, it will have and call people upon it to testify on issues relating to American national security, on issues of intelligence and stuff like that. Maybe they'll have them come on and they'll discuss encryption methods or something. Sometimes it's very boring, but sometimes it's not. And today, it was not. And the reason why is that Kash Patel, the CIA director, who's the head of the FBI, even though he's terribly underqualified, except for the fact of being overqualified when it comes to loyalty. Then there's Ratcliffe, who's now the new CIA director, and even Tulsi Gabbard, which is the top intelligence official in the country who prepares intelligence briefings for the President of the United States, and our gal, according to Russia Today, is here to actually testify. At the same time that we've just had this big scandal with the intelligence leak. For those of you who don't know, I'll just drop it very quickly. There was a Signal group chat where the Vice President of the United States, Mike Waltz, and a number of others were basically like half, if not most of Trump's cabinet seemed to be in this group chat, messaging each other in Signal about the times they were going to strike the Houthis, about the locations they were going to strike the Houthis, and all sorts of information that would be highly, highly classified. Now, there's already a problem with this happening on Signal, which, while has a reputation for being more secure, is unsecure in one specific way that I'm going to mention in a second that I think is of great import. But the big issue, the reason we even know about it, otherwise we probably wouldn't know, unless it came around the long way and we had a real intelligence catastrophe, is that a journalist was added from The Atlantic to the group chat before the bombings. At first, they thought it was a joke as they looked around this group chat, like, the vice president. What? Why is the Secretary of Defense giving, like, fist emoji and fire emojis and flexing? And they didn't think it was serious until the times that they chose for the strikes correlated with real airstrikes in Yemen and the locations. And so then they produced a report about being added to this group chat, which is a massive intelligence failure. Because while it is believed that Mike Waltz, who is Trump's national security advisor, was the person who added him to the group chat, even Trump kind of grumbling about it, Trump's still in defense mode around it. He's still trying to defend Mike Waltz. He's not going to throw him under the table. He's not going to throw him under the bus. This is still a massive failure for the Trump administration, intelligence-wise, to not only have this leak. Trump is no stranger to leaks, but have it leak in such an embarrassing way on a group chat by just, oops, accidentally added the journalist. This would be why you wouldn't use Signal, not only because of the intelligence issue we're going to get into in a bit, but also because you don't want to accidentally just, oops, add in another person. It's not like there are not a secure methods of communication that can be used. It's just that this is probably the easier method. I really think that's it. I think that they just thought it was easier, just being a big group chat. But a lot of this, I can't even really find the motivation for this big group chat in some instances, because like the fire emojis and the flex emojis, this has to be more personal. This almost like Pete Hegseth is trying to prove to these people that he belongs there, that he's strong and he's tough. He's putting on a performance for an audience that isn't there outside of, well, I guess the cabinet. Either way, massive failure. Imagine if it was somebody like Laura Loomer that was added to it instead, and then they leaked it to somebody else, and then it got out. And imagine if it wasn't just locations and airstrikes, which is, of course, already a gigantic leak, but it was a huge list of classified, information on the location of agents around the country or around the world that could get CIA agents killed, or it's classified information of something of real national security importance. Now, we don't know what all of the messages exactly exchanged were. We have some reports from The Atlantic of what else was talked about in those group chats, but what we have now is a Senate that is very eager to see exactly what those journalists could see and what could be seen, and this is a big, big issue that should be put forward, what the Russians could see. because there's two issues of import here before we get into the actual hearing. Number one, Signal has been reported as being potentially vulnerable to Russian manipulation, as in the Russians could access messages or see what's being communicated on Signal, possibly. Now, this has not been solved. This is not something that has been closed and we don't know is an issue. And so communicating this on Signal, when the Russians have in the past, there have been reports that they've provided intelligence to the Houthis on boats passing the Red Sea. We could see how that is an intelligence failure. We can see how that's a problem. And the second thing, outside of the Russians being able to see it just through possibly Signal being an intelligence failure in and of itself, then there was a problem of Steve Witkoff, who is helping to negotiate the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire attempt, from halfway across the court from Donald Trump, right? He's facilitating that. And he was, according to Witkoff's own words and what he was saying publicly at the time of this discussion, he was in Russia, in Moscow, talking to the Russians. If that's the case, the possibility of them accessing messages that he is sending from within Russia, obviously that goes up. Now, this has left a lot of questions for what was in those messages, what the Russians could have seen, what other people could have seen, what the journalists could have seen, security practices in place, whether it was off of the personal devices or government devices, which is something Tulsi gets grilled for a little bit, and she refuses to answer. I mean, she probably performs the worst out of everybody here. So I wanted just to show a few interactions that happened. We're going to start with John Ossoff. Then we're going to go probably to Senator Jack Reed, probably Mark Kelly, and I believe a separate senator as well who wanted to talk to Gabbard. So let's start with John Ossoff questioning intelligence vessels.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senator Ossoff.
By the way, it would be the DOJ and the FBI, Kash Patel's FBI, that would be looking into something like this. And I do want to remind people that when Tulsi was trying to get confirmed, she said she would investigate any intelligence failure. So, get to work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for joining us and for your service. Just to make sure I understand some of the basics here. So, Director Ratcliffe, you were a member of the Houthi PC small group signal chain, correct?
I was.
Yeah, and so were the Vice President, the Secretaries of State and Defense, the National Security Advisor, and Ms. Gabbard, correct?
I believe so. I don't have a list of who was invited to be on.
And so was national political reporter Jeffrey Goldberg, correct?
I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
I don't know Jeffrey Goldberg, and I've already testified. I don't know whether or how he was added.
Okay, well, he was a member.
Whether or how he was well, I mean, it's been publicly reported he's been added. Now, I don't know what he means by it. Okay, I guess. Here we go.
Member of the signal chain, and the discussion included the Vice President's private opinion on the wisdom of proposed U.S. strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
Vance, quote, I think we are making a mistake. I am not sure the President is aware of how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There was a strong argument for delaying this a month. You don't recall?
I don't, as you
don't recall seeing that?
Read that, I don't.
It included the private opinions of the Secretary of Defense on the timing of strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
Doesn't recall.
Director Ratcliffe, surely you prepared for this hearing today. You were...
To be clear, he's the CIA director. He's in charge of the CIA. Intelligence matters is kind of supposed to be his thing.
Part of a group of principals, senior echelons of the U.S. government, in now a widely publicized breach of sensitive information. You don't recall whether the Vice President opined on the wisdom of the strikes? That's your testimony today under oath?
In that setting, I don't recall.
Here's what Secretary Hegseth said, quote, waiting a few weeks or months does not fundamentally change the calculus. Two immediate risks on waiting. One, this leaks and we look indecisive. Two, Israel takes an action first or Gaza ceases.
Well, I guess them acting quick did stop. If they would have waited another day, maybe that would have gone badly. But again, the journalists didn't even believe it was real because the story was so ridiculous. So maybe they would have just ignored it and thought they were just getting pranked if they didn't go through with it.
ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our own terms. Your testimony is you don't recall the Secretary of Defense sending that message or reading it?
Anna Markey's saying that Oliver North also didn't recall the Contras either. A lot of people have forgotten to recall things of import that would have seemingly been big events of their life in the Senate hearings. This is not the first.
I recall there being an exchange. I don't recall the specifics as you're reading it.
Well, let's put it this way, Director Ratcliffe, a discussion by senior U.S. officials on the timing and risks of a proposed military campaign and disagreements between the president and the vice president about U.S. plans and intentions would be of obvious interest to foreign intelligence services, would it not?
Yes.
And they were discussing the timing of sending U.S. air crews into enemy airspace.
Now, to be clear, out of everything that is bad about this, that fact right there is the most dangerous fact about this. It's one thing to know that a location is going to get hit, which is bad enough because you can prepare for it. But to know the timing, that means you can be prepared for a specific moment, which could then see an interception of American air power in the killing of American airmen. Now, again, this journalist was not an enemy of the United States in some capacity, had no interest of giving this information to the Houthis. And as far as we know, the Russians did not pass over any information to them through Signal or Steve Witkoff being over there, according to Steve, during the time of these communications. But that's this time. And honestly, the reason it didn't get caught was because of luck with percentages, not because we were airtight with our intelligence, obviously through the existence of the scandal.
Where they faced an air defense threat, correct?
I'm going to, Senator, defer to the other principles that you're referring to about
now,
what the meaning.
What's interesting is before, when he could say, look, it would be an intelligence failure if XYZ happened, he could answer it clearly. But now he's laying out a hypothetical, which isn't really a hypothetical, but is the thing that almost, didn't almost, just happened. Now he's deferring. We're going to get a lot of, honestly, you think this is bad and you think this is slippery? Wait till you get to Tulsi. I'm not kidding.
In the context of
They're
what they were
talking about the
auditing.
timing of U.S. airstrikes, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and therefore the timing of sending U.S. air crews into hostile airspace, correct?
Yes.
And therefore the time period during which enemy air defenses could target U.S. air crews flying in enemy airspace, correct?
I don't know that.
You do know that.
What do you mean you don't know that? So, okay, so to believe what Ratcliffe is saying would be to assume that the Houthis knew the exact time and location as to where we were going to bomb using American air power, that they would have, number one, no means to do anything about it, and number two, no incentive. They certainly have an incentive, and they are provided weapons by the Iranians, which could include air defense systems, which they do have. Look, I'm not saying that the Houthis have the best air defense systems in the world, or it would be highly likely they would end up actually knocking down one of our planes, but they've knocked down our drones before. They have. So if they had this information, you could get a mixture of events that could have led to the death of an American pilot, or at least the downing of an aircraft and hopeful retrieval of an American pilot, which, yeah, good luck. As Anna Markey just pointed out in chat, they have SA-3s.
Let me ask this question, General Hawk. You lead America's signals intelligence collection. Would the private deliberation of foreign...
which is a surface-to-air missile system. I should have probably said that. Old commie bloc Soviet style.
Senior officials about the wisdom and timing of potential military action be a collection priority for you and the U.S. intelligence community?
Senator, it's our job to do indications.
One second, let me hear that question again.
Flying in enemy airspace, correct?
I don't know that.
You do know that. Let me ask this question, General Hawk. You lead America's signals intelligence collection. Would the private deliberation of foreign senior officials about the wisdom and timing of potential military action be a collection priority for you and the U.S. intelligence community?
Senator, it's our job to do indications and warning for both the plans and intentions of adversary leaders and for military commanders.
And would not information about the timing of airstrikes allow a military to pre-position or cue air defense systems to shoot down enemy aircraft?
It's a very simple question, and the answer is yes.
I think, Senator, from our perspective, any advance warning is something that we certainly are trying to protect.
Yeah. Director.
Okay, there you go. That's an answer.
Ratcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
It would be so easy for them to just say, look, it was a mistake. Next time we're gonna try not to use Signal. We'll make sure we don't accidentally add anybody to the group chat. We wanted the Atlantic in there. Actually, me and the Atlantic, I said we didn't know each other, but actually we go way back. You know, we used to, he used to get on my shoulders back in swim camp, and we would like fight with the other kids, on top of my shoulders in the pool, like yeah, we really meant to include come on, just say it was a mistake. You didn't mean to have the journalists in there. You probably shouldn't have had Steve Witkoff communicating while in Russia at the time. Signal, probably not the best when discussing detailed information about military operations. If you're just having some type of semi-off-the-record conversation, okay, but these details on Signal, I don't know about that. If you were just some nobody, some soldier in the middle of nowhere doing some private military, maybe that makes sense, because how much motivation would party X, Y, and Z have to really interfere? But you're working with the president of the United States, the most powerful country on the planet. You're going to have to try a little harder than that.
Hold on.
No, you
let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director Ratcliffe, I asked you.
OMG, Dylan, let Ossoff talk. Just because you said that, I'm so motivated to skip the end of this. I'm so motivated, but I'm feeling gracious.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director Ratcliffe, I asked you a yes or no question, and now you hold on. A national political reporter
you can characterize it how you want.
Was made privy
the White
to
House
sensitive information about imminent military operations against a foreign terrorist organization.
Mistake of adding a reporter,
and that wasn't a huge mistake. That wasn't a huge mistake.
Well, I think they characterize it as
an embarrassment. This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error. And by the way, we will get the full transcript of this chain, and your testimony will be measured carefully against its content. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oof. My goodness. It's like a teacher scolding a child. He's dodgy like a child, shifty eyes like a child. Moving over to Senator Jack Reed, talking to Kash Patel and John Ratcliffe. Senator Jack Reed is the senator from Rhode Island. He's specifically talking about why they can't now release the entire chat, because there's this back and forth during this hearing that was very strange, where they would say, like, okay, was there classified information in there? And either someone would say, I don't know of any classified information in there. I have no idea. Now, this is silly, since we already have reports of, the timings and, the locations of what time it would be. This is all classified information. Under any paradigm in the United States government, it would be classified information. You're not going to tell, you usually don't tell, like, we're going to bomb you at X hour at X location, because you don't want your guys to get killed. Unless we're saying that the lives of U.S. airmen are no longer enough of a priority to qualify as classified information. Either way, they're trying to find out if there's classified information in there, get something on the record. They're being really shifty about it. And he's like, okay, well, if there's no classified information, show us the texts. If there's nothing classified on there and it's already been reported by the press, then there should be no problem with you posting the entire text chain. And then they refuse. And then it just starts this vicious cycle for the entire hearing where it's like, is there classified information? Well, I mean, okay, then reveal the text chain. Well, I don't know. And it's just sad to watch. Eventually, though, I think somebody, like, they just default to this idea of, well, it's being looked into, don't worry about it. Listen to this.
If you are not aware of any classified information on the discussions back and forth, would it be appropriate for the author to release the entire text of what he heard or transcribed?
I think the author has released, my understanding, essentially almost all of the information as it's been related to me. I don't know what calculation the author made with regard to what information would be released or not.
Well, he
again, I can again confirm that with respect to the communications that were related, as to me, there was no classified information.
According to the article, quote, the message contained information that might be interpreted as related to actual and current intelligence operations, and the author did not disclose that information. So the question would be, if he disclosed everything he heard, in your view.
That wouldn't be classified information. I know the context of what that is, and I think the author said might be interpreted as related to intelligence information. It was not classified information.
So it goes back to my point. If he released all this information he did not release, he could do so without any liability at the federal level.
I think you're asking for a legal answer that I'm not able to give you, but.
Mr. Patel, can you opine? You're a lawyer and you're the director of the FBI. Would he face any legal liability if he released the information?
Because of the questions you and the vice chairman have put to me, I'm not going to prejudge the situation, and that legal call is ultimately for the Department of Justice.
Hey, look, top legal officials in the country. You're supposed to be like the big legal minds. FBI director, what's up? Thank you. I appreciate that, Kash Patel. Get back to doing the good work of the FBI. Okay, moving on. We're still not done. We got so much more still to do. Okay, so I want to go through two more senators grilling both Tulsi and going after John Ratcliffe and Tulsi again. Anytime Tulsi gets grilled, I just need to hear it because it brings me immense joy to my soul.
To what I addressed at the outset. I mean, this was not only sloppy, it not only violated all procedures, but if this information...
By the way, I just by nature could not give Senator Mark Warner a shout out because he's from Virginia.
...had gotten out, American lives could have been lost. The Houthis had this information, could reposition their defensive systems. So I want to get a little more information about this. Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not, are you denying, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat?
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group?
I'm not TG. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, when you look at the group chat, you can see there's only one person who has his face there, and it's Pete Hegseth. He actually took the time to make sure he put his official account profile on his Signal thing with his name and everything. He spammed fire emojis, fist emojis, flex emojis, but everybody else is like abbreviations. JD Vance is, I believe it's JV for JD Vance, right? JV, because it takes your first letter from your first name and the first letter from your your last name, from your second name. And so one of the names in there is TG, which could easily be Tulsi Gabbard. And considering that she's the top intelligence official in the country and they're discussing things such as intelligence matters, and she has to brief the president every day on such intelligence matters, her being in this group chat would make immense sense. And so she's almost certainly in there. And she's being dodgy about it because she says somebody's looking into it.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not, are you denying, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat?
I'm not going to get into the specifics
So
of
you
the
refuse to
deliberate.
acknowledge whether you were on this group chat?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because
Council.
it's all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
Just because it's under review does not mean she can't comment on issues, like if she was in the group chat. That doesn't, she could say if she's in the group chat, and if it's not an issue of classification, then she could share all this information for sure. But the reason they probably can't share it is because there was probably classified information in there, because that's a scandal. But they don't want to acknowledge it's a scandal while it's already being reported as a scandal and the information's already out there. It's almost like you're just kind of sitting there as the boat is sinking, just kind of hope, just like, don't worry, we'll look, you know, we sent a crew down there to check out if there's a hole, and like the water's already up to your knees.
As the White House previously
Is it
stated,
classified or non-classified information on this text?
I can confirm.
Director Radcliffe, were you on the group chat?
Senator, I was on a signal messaging group.
So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat?
I was.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so the CIA director, yes, I was John Ratcliffe in the thing. Boom, done. Tulsi Gabbard, 3 minutes. Look at that. Not 3 minutes, sorry. I thought it was 3 minutes. Maybe it's just that when Tulsi talks, time for me slows down. I feel like I'm gonna get an aneurysm. But there was like a full minute of her dodging her way from that. I can't answer it. It's under review. It's under review. It's under review. And then they pass it over to CIA director. Yeah, I was there. So you can say it. They don't got their messaging straight. They don't know what they can say and what they can't say. Tulsi Gabbard is walking on eggshells because she's supposed to be the top intelligence official in the country. This is an intelligence failure. So this looks bad for her since she's supposed to be the top intelligence official in the country, and she's in the Signal chat room with the journalist, doesn't find out until the reports comes out. Looks bad. So I think she's walking on eggshells, but she's walking on eggshells so much that she just looks like she can't answer a simple question, which has just been compounded by John Ratcliffe, who apparently didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to say whether you were in the group chat. Maybe he just has enough of a brain cell to understand that, like, the gig is up on whether I was there or not. Now it's just a question of how bad it is.
Can I provide some context, Senator, to that?
Yes, but I've got a series of questions.
Well, but I think it's important because at the outset, you made a couple of comments about signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was Signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration.
Okay, just because you can use Signal does not mean Signal is the premier messaging app for the CIA in all matters. Some messages would have been of such import that you can't just bust out your personal phone and go doot, 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 doot. Some matters are of a little bit more import than that. And I would say, you know, the flight times for American airmen might be something you would want to keep on an even more secure line, especially if you're one of the people in said conversation is currently in Moscow, which is one of the biggest weaknesses at Signal is a potential intelligence failure from the Russians, who just so happens to be allies of convenience with the Houthis in some ways.
Director Ratcliffe, I've got a series of questions. If you're making the statement, if you're making the statement, the Signal is a secure channel.
No, can I answer that? It is
I've got a series
end-to-end decryption. So to finish,
I understand encryption.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels. Right. So those were procedures that were implemented. My staff implemented those processes, followed those processes, complied with those processes, and finally, just please. So my communications, to be clear, in a Signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, we will make that determination, because if it's not classified, share the text with the committee. Let me go on. Director
That's the easiest follow-up in the world.
Gabbard, you are the security executive, and so
half of this isn't even half of this shouldn't even be scandalous. Half of this is they just don't know how to properly plan out their answers. So half of them are answering questions that the other half won't answer, even though they all know the answers to the questions, which we all know, and they know that we know. So why even keep up the charade?
access guidelines for classified information. Did you contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
Okay, let's take our bets. Take our bets right now. $5 per bet. Is Tulsi going to answer this question in any capacity, or is it going to be it's under review? I'll take your bets right now. Submit it in the chat. RCT, thank you so much for the tier 1 9-month sub. I'm betting review.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material.
Whoa, that's even better than what I expected, because that right there is a declaration that we haven't gotten from anybody else, that there was no classified material in that chat room at all, because it's been reported that the times of the strikes were in the chat room. That would be classified. Under what doctrine would times of attacks not be classified? Hey, do you guys think it would be useful for the Germans to have the time of the D-Day attack? Just curious. Do you think it would have been useful for Soleimani to know the location and time of when they were going to strike and try to assassinate him? Do you think any of this would be useful in any way? That a nation state would want that to be classified?
We know the answer.
Of course we know the answer. Thank you, JP. Of course we know.
Share it with the committee.
Why did she say that? We know that isn't true.
Hey.
And if there is no classified data, and if there is no classified information, does she know what the follow-up question is going to be? Share it. If there's no classification, if there's no problem with classified data in the chat room, then share every single message. But you know what Signal does? After a certain period of time, messages get deleted. But they just want to wait this out and hope nobody ever sees it? Might be a little hard. There was a journalist in there.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer. So please answer the question. If this was Director Gabbard, if this was a rank and file intelligence officer who did this kind of careless behavior, what would you do with them?
Senator, I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared in that.
There's no
that's not the question he just asked. Now it's not even acknowledging what the question was. She knows that her power backer cares nothing but loyalty. So if she comes here and just says, hail the golden age of Trump, and I won't answer your question, who's gonna go after her? The FBI? The FBI? Who's going after her? Trump's Department of Justice? No. So, she just can just sit there and just not answer the questions. And this is such a simple question.
Who did this kind of careless behavior? Intelligence officer. If this was Director Gabbard, if this was a rank and file intelligence officer who did this kind of careless behavior, what would you do with them?
They'd be fired. They'd be gone. If a rank and file intelligence officer added a journalist to a Signal group where they were, for some reason, discussing the location and times of attacks or intelligence handovers or anything important, they would be long gone. Their office would not be cleaned out. Their office would be power washed out. But we have a new system of requirements for the top of the office.
Senator, I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared in that.
And if there's no classified materials, share. And then if there's no classified materials, then you can't even answer the question. whether you're on the chat. This is strangely familiar, and I think my colleagues will remember, when you couldn't answer the question, is Edward Snowden a traitor? Now I have serious doubts about your, anyway. Director Gabbard, I'm going to give you this. Tweeted just 11 days ago, and I'm quoting you. Any unauthorized release of classified information is a violation of the law and will be treated as such. So if this information is classified, what are you going to do?
Senator, 2 points here. First of all, there's a difference between inadvertent release versus
careless and sloppy,
malicious leaks of classified information. The second point is there was no classified information that was on
the
the
information
signal
committee
group
should
chat.
get that information. Director
And the
Patel,
National Security
Director
Council
Patel,
has
my time's
reviewed
about out,
how
and I'm
this
going to use
occurred.
my 12 seconds up the chairman came. Director Patel, has the FBI launched any investigation of this?
Senator, I was just briefed about it late last night, this morning. I don't have an update.
I would like to get an answer by the end of the day.
I gotta say, I appreciate them being aggressive about their time because, you know, none of them will answer questions outside of being forced to speak before Congress because they do not care. They do not care. But let's do one more to wrap this up, and this is going to be the Senator from Arizona, astronaut man, and VP consideree for Harris, Mark Kelly, and strong supporter of Ukraine.
I'm going to come back to the
Not exactly my favorite senator, but I mean, always appreciate that.
topic of the day here, the signal chain as reported by The Atlantic. Ms. Gabbard, you each testified that there was no information operational in nature, no classified information. So I want to ask each of you just a series of, just respond yes or no. I'll start with Ms. Gabbard. In the signal chain that we have been talking about, was there any mention of a target in Yemen?
I don't remember mention of specific targets.
Any generic target?
I believe there was discussion around targets in general.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
I think that's consistent with my recollection. Again, I don't have access to that. But
Was there any mention, Ms. Gabbard, of a weapon or weapons system?
I don't recall specific weapons systems being named.
I'm not talking about specific, any weapon or weapons system.
I don't recall specific names of systems or weapons being used or named within the
Well, I'm
chat.
not asking whether, I don't want you to tell me what the specific weapon was, but any weapon at all. Mr. Ratcliffe, same question.
I don't recall.
How about anything about timing? Ms. Gabbard?
I don't recall specific timing.
They can't recall
Was
a
there any
lot.
I
mention?
won't get into the detail
Why
of,
can't it? Can we get a no? Can we get a no?
of the conversation, but obviously there was a significant amount of planning and internal discussions that had occurred prior to and outside of this signal chat.
Mr. Ratcliffe, you're nodding your head. Any mention of any military unit whatsoever? Mr. Ratcliffe?
Not that I recall.
Ms. Gabbard?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so I understand that DoD policy prohibits discussion of even what is called controlled unclassified information, or CUI, on unsecured devices. Are both of you aware of that DoD policy?
I haven't read that policy.
Not familiar with the DoD policy, but I would say that the Secretary of Defense is the original classification authority for DoD in deciding what would be classified information.
Ms. Gabbard, does the intelligence community have a policy that prohibits discussion of controlled unclassified information?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Controlled unclassified information, according to DoD, includes
Oh my God, we just got a beautiful update to the story, and we'll talk about it in a moment. But we'll finish this, and I'll show you the update that Mike Waltz just gave us from Fox.
information that is information that has not been approved for public release, would you, of what's been disclosed publicly of the signal chain, would either of you feel that that would be approved for public release? Ms. Gabbard.
The discussion that took place in that Signal chat group was a conversation reflecting national security leaders and the vice president around the president's objectives.
So yes or no, would you approve that for public release?
I don't feel I can answer that question here.
Because of the nature of this hearing?
Because of the nature of a private discussion that took place between individual leaders in our government.
It would make sense that you would not approve it for public release, wouldn't it?
There are other factors that would go into that consideration.
Mr. Ratcliffe, yes or no?
I wouldn't approve the release of classified information.
Again, that's not just any woman talking or any, that's the head intelligence official, Tulsi Gabbard, in the entire country. She is the person who is informing the president on all threats to the nation, intelligence-wise, foreign and domestic.
Again, as I've said, my
I'm not talking about classified information, Mr. Ratcliffe. I'm talking about information that has not been approved for public release. That is information that is considered controlled, unclassified information.
The principles that would have been on that would have been individuals capable of approving that for public release.
Do you, I got 20 seconds. The deliberation as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country, would you consider that classified information, Ms. Gabbard?
Well, the information was not classified.
This is not, I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about deliberation from principles as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country.
Can they answer
Would you
any
consider
question?
that classified information? I'm not talking about what happened this week.
There are other factors that would go into determining that classification.
Mr. Ratcliffe?
It's like that for the whole hearing. It doesn't change. If you want to go look at any more interesting moments, there's a few more, but it's all just new ways to dodge the same questions we've seen. Again, it just seems so uncoordinated. But we just got one last update I wanted to throw out at you guys for the story. Mike Waltz, Donald Trump's national security advisor, who Donald Trump said on Tuesday, I don't know, I think it was earlier on, no, it was either yesterday or early today. He said that he was the person who actually added the journalist to the call. He has come forward with the defense.
Bankrupt man.
Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. Thank you. He has a defense, guys. Don't worry. Mike Waltz has an answer. His phone was hacked into by the journalist. They schemed his way into the phone, and then he added himself to the group chat.
The president expressed complete confidence in you today and his entire cabinet. But how did a Trump-hating editor of The Atlantic end up on your Signal chat?
Yeah, how did a Trump-hating editor of The Atlantic? My gosh, the language. Okay, answer.
You know, Laura, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but of all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, who has lied to Gold Star families, lied to their attorneys, and gone to Russia hoax, gone to just all kinds of links to lie and smear the president of the United States, and he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group.
Is someone in your...
I don't know. I don't have any answers. I got no answers. I don't know. But isn't it suspicious? Would it be easier to believe that I'm actually a moron, or, and I accidentally added him, or that deep dark forces are at work from deep down in the 101-acre woods right next to the crooked old oak tree lies a cove, which if You go inside lies a scheming group of goblins and bridge trolls who have, get out of here. Somebody made a mistake. It happens. We're all human beings. I've accidentally sent messages to the wrong people. It happens, right? Just say something like that happened, and in the future you won't use Signal, and you'll use a more secured platform where it's not just 2 clicks until anyone in the world, from Laura Loomer to Kanye West to anyone, could be added to one of these conversations. Instead, we're running around in fantasy land questioning if George Soros and his Antifa super hackers went in, hacked into Mike Waltz's phone to make him add a journalist that doesn't like Trump to the Signal call in order to embarrass the Trump administration and Mike Waltz in particular for some reason. Trump is now blaming an insane Waltz aide. Does anybody have this update? What? These excuses are just getting better. Always blame the staff